and don't call me Shirley. What's going on YouTube? It's the NFL picks against the spread for week 17, 21-22 NFL season. Fat guy, we had a strong week. I think 57%, 8-6 against the spread, but I think we're still down
Yes.
for the season. I believe 6 games below 500.
Well, these are contest picks. I don't want to make any excuses, but we're trying to give you information here. Not everything is a bet. On to the next one.
All right, there it is. 114, 120, and 4. 48.7%. Fat
Smooth
guy is
start.
on the ball
Yeah.
tonight. On to the games. Who cares about all this stuff? I think we're done with Thursday night football. So on to the Sunday early slate where we start off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to New York to take on the Jets, who are 13-point underdogs at home. Fat guy, do you like either side early on? Is there any closing line value, do you feel like?
I
What do
don't
you
think
think of when
so.
you see this game?
What I think of this is probably about right. I actually think 13 and a half might be closer to right. I'm still going to take the Jets purely because it's a contest pick. But the Bucks getting it done against Carolina, that's um it, it's not really going to like boost their stock, right? Like people
It's
are still going to
expected.
it's expected, but it's like winning like that should never really be expected in the NFL if that makes any sense. And then the Jets too, like they like that's a reasonable performance. Do you know what I mean? But how could their
Mhm.
stock get boosted? Do you know what I mean? Like just off of
Yeah,
that
against the Jags, it's
against the
not going to
Jags,
happen.
it's not going to move the line, right? So when it's both kind of moot, you know what I mean? There's no public backing. They're going to naturally back the Buccaneers anyways. So I mean, I guess technically you could take the Bucks minus 13, but I just don't see it moving. I don't see the mobility here. 13 is a bit of a no man's land, but 14 isn't. 14 and a half certainly isn't. I mean, if it did end up moving to 14 and a half, I would be pretty inclined to take the Jets. As far as betting this game, it's a no-go for me. It's purely a contest pick. I'm not sure you can ascertain closing line value. Perhaps you could on the Bucks, but then again, I tried to explain this to somebody. Um, Getting closing line value, but not enough to beat the juice. That's what would happen if, say, there was a move between 13 and 13 and a half. Like, is that half point going to make you beat any sort of juice? Even like minus 104. I don't think that half point would add. Do you know what I mean? Especially a good way of understanding that equity is to align all of, even though I don't think this works in 2022, I guess, 2021, if you line up all of the point spreads on like a linear graph in conjunction with money lines, if you see like what type of percentage edge or gap there is between 13 and 13 and a half when you look at adjacent money lines. Of course, not all money lines are put completely linearly, especially when there's different juice on the spreads. But if you were to, take note of them, especially for those of you that use a lot of Google Sheets to kind of track the data on all this betting information, you definitely have that access to you. And I do implore everyone to do so. More data is better than no data, and no data is better than bad data, if that makes any sense. That being said, if you're going to look at like the Bucks at minus 13 are going to be probably a minus 610 or something like that. Even the gap in money line between minus 13 and 13 and a half is not going to beat any juice aside from maybe minus like 101. And even then, I don't know. Point in case there's another weird thing. If you bet in European odds, it's or sorry decimal odds, they're a lot more accurate and to the point than American odds. American odds don't allow for as much decimal discrepancy. That being said, we went on a little bit of a math tangent here. I don't think there's value on this game. I don't like it. Contest pick New York Jets.
And currently at Pinnacle, Tampa Bay minus 728. So huge money line
See, I didn't
favorites.
even get
Whereas,
up that high. Yeah, there you
yeah,
go.
but it becomes so minuscule even between like a minus 700, minus 600. And then on the flip side, the Jets plus 541 at the moment at Pinnacle. On to
Yeah,
the next game though. This with how both of these teams played today, because we're recording this on Sunday. This is going to be the marquee matchup probably of the early slate. But the Kansas City Chiefs travel to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Bengals are getting, they're 4-point underdogs at home. Fat guy, do you think there's closing line value on either side?
I don't know. This is a weird one. If you like I don't really think so. Actually, I'm gonna say I don't know. This could waffle though. Like four is not really a key number when you look at uh win margin frequencies. So like there's a lot of mobility, and like neither is 5. Like 5.5, to get to 5.5, the movement is just it's very easy. It's elastic, as I like to say, to use an economics term. And going down to 3.5, that's not that unreasonable either. So I think there's a chance of movement. I'm just not sure what direction, and I'm not sure I care either. Like I don't really like this game, to be honest. 3.5, that's where you'll get resistance. If this goes to Kansas City -3, I'd be very surprised, right? Like I think, and it's more of the sharp books are starting to do this, if people notice, is they're just adjusting juice more than anything. You can bet alt lines, but the promoted line that they put like as the first one where you adjust from seems to, instead of movement, they just add heavy juice. I've even seen like, even at Pinnacle, like -122 on like you know what I mean? Like -3 instead,
Yeah.
or -2.5, -121 instead of moving it to 3, right? Because those are the big numbers: 2.5 to 3, 3 to 3.5, 3.5 to 3. That's why I don't see it like, I could see it all the way up to Cincinnati +5.5, and I could see it down to Kansas City -3.5 bad juice, which is probably, I mean, if you were to use an alternate line from 4 to 3.5, that's really what it would be. It's like anything, you just adjust the juice. But that being said, I don't know if there's closing line value. Cincinnati really getting it done, putting a stamp on that game, despite playing a third-string quarterback. I mean, I guess that's going to hurt them a little bit. And Kansas City really destroying the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Like neither of those things are expected as we had used earlier, which both of us would agree nothing really is expected. But I'm not sure there's any clout to be gained. And Kansas City, I think it still has the ire of bettors, considering they don't, like, they've done a little bit better in recent times, but if you count up last year and then carried it over to the beginning of this year, like Kansas City won, but they never really covered, right? So that sticks out a little bit more to bettors, I think. And Cincinnati's been a reasonable cover team. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but
8-7-0 this year for Cincinnati, and Kansas City's the same. So they're actually equal on closing lines against the spread this season.
I thought Cincinnati would have been up 1 or 2 games. Well, that being said, Kansas City, I feel like they have more attention on them. They've had more dollars wagered, more volume, betting volume as well. That more likely there's less people impressed with them, maybe. So maybe Kansas City -3.5 with bad juice. That might be it. So for a contest pick, this is just going to be Cincinnati. I don't have really much to add because this is one where I'm curious. Like, where do the sentiments of the public lie? Is there any at all? That would be really the question.
Yeah, it's a tough one to gauge after both teams played so well. On to the next one. The Las Vegas Raiders traveling to Indy to take on the Colts, who are 8.5-point favorites at home. 98% of early money, I believe, is on the Indianapolis Colts. Fat Guy, is there a side that you like, or do you see any closing line value on this game?
No. I actually think this is a really strong line. I think this is actually a perfect line, to be honest. I think this should be. I don't know, have the juice in front of me, so you're probably going to look as I say this. I think that Indy should be juiced up a little bit on this spot too. Like 8.5, I think is the perfect number for this game. Indy has been a darling of mine. You know, me and groups of friends, we do a win drafting pool. So you draft teams. In terms of my first round pick I was 3rd overall, was Indianapolis. And I really like this team. I like this coaching staff. And I think this line is just right. I'm going to take Vegas in the points. That being said, but this is purely a contest pick. You know, I'm following the adage, when in doubt, take points. That's 3 in a row where I really don't like it. But then again, things kind of get sharper near the end of the year. As I mentioned, I don't know anyone, and I haven't heard of anyone beating late season baseball. And I can't imagine with higher juice, 20-cent lines and, sometimes 10-cent lines are usually in between with NFL football. I'm not sure how easy it is to beat as well. So that being said, this is a when in doubt case. I'm going to take the Raiders. I do think Indianapolis is 8.5 is a good line. I would be happy with an Indy 7. And it could shift there because of COVID news and stuff like that. That stuff is really hard to predict. And I did see a comment in the comment sections about why do you do these so early? It's kind of silly. The whole point is to get ahead of it. Do you know what I mean? You can get bad COVID news, but you can get COVID news go your way as well, right? So you want to bet early lines because that's where you get the most advantage. That's why this show comes out. We try and do it faster than anyone else because this is the time to bet. We want to bring attention to the masses. Of course, the video doesn't come out even as fast. We almost want to just stream it live to be real, and that might be the next iteration. But that being said, you want to bet early. Betting closing lines means you're betting into an efficient market. Any idea you have about, this team has a good defense, but this team has a good offense, this person is out, all of that is calculated into the line, right? There's nothing like those types of really, I don't know, we're going to call them sports cliches almost. Everybody knows them. You're not reinventing the wheel. It's all priced in. Outside information like COVID outs that that someone else doesn't know, that's not priced in. Early lines where they're trying to establish the market doesn't have certain things priced in. And I can't go through everything on here. But that being said, betting early is almost always better. Almost. Betting closing is very difficult to beat. And realistically, the only situation where you want to bet closing is betting underdogs that have gotten the best price possible for them at close. So the market has overcompensated and given up a couple extra points for a bad underdog. That's usually the best time to bet closing lines. Betting early lines is especially when you want to bet favorites and I guess overpriced underdogs as well that are going to get public backing, which is rare, I might add. That being said, pure contest pick. Let's take the Vegas Raiders.
I'm just going to touch on this line IRL, but this opened at 8.5, and in the span of an hour since we've last looked, it's now up to 9.5. But there's heavy juice on the Raiders side, plus 9.5 at minus 126. So it's interesting that it's moved a point. 9 doesn't mean too much, but it's very interesting that they moved it to 9.5.
It is what I said. If you were to use the regular, it would be a juiced up Indy minus 8.5. That's exactly. That's really what it was. What's happened and that's what I said it would be. It's because, like I said, I think that's a perfect line. And this is one of those things where they're just trying to get people to compound commissions. Do you know what I mean? You can get a bad juice Indy, or you can get a bad juice Raiders. This is excellent bookmaking. I love it. What a great line. Las Vegas, Indianapolis. I'm actually impressed. On to the next game, Big Rye.
It's going to be Philly at Washington. So we have a divisional matchup here. Washington 3-point dogs at home. Do you think there's closing line value in this game, Fat Guy?
This is a really tough one considering how decimated Washington was this last game, and Philadelphia just destroying a Giants team. That's another thing. It's expected. It's never expected to win by that much in the NFL, but technically I guess it is expected. I'm going to take Philadelphia here. It's, again, purely a contest pick. I want to say, there's going to be value here, there, and everywhere. This is the right play, I think. Philly minus 3 does seem right. I don't think if you paid like a 20-cent line, say you had to pay minus 110 on both sides, I don't really think that there's a making money proposition. I think this is closer to equilibrium with both teams at current strength, we'll call them, with no COVID outs. So the play is going to be Philly minus 3. I have a small lean there, and only in terms of the contest. I don't have much to add other than that.
And the next game is going to be Atlanta at Buffalo. Buffalo 13.5-point favorites at home. Unfortunately, no betting market data as of yet. Fat Guy, do you think there's closing line value on either side?
This is another really, really tough one. 13.5, I think, is kind of right. Buffalo is one of those teams where I think that like I said, they don't play from ahead very well, and that being said, they're more likely to lose or cover big spreads. So I kind of like them to cover this spread. I am going to take Atlanta because it's purely a contest pick, but I could see Atlanta cover this. Buffalo cover this big spread. That being said, this is why I've said this earlier. I made a notion to it last week with Detroit, Arizona, where I said you're better off taking Arizona against the spread, Detroit money line, and then the Detroit money line came in. I'm not sure how many people bet it. I was one of the few to do it, but it was a really great surprise. And I feel this way about Atlanta. Do I think Atlanta is going to beat Buffalo? No. But what do we got there in odd set anyways, Big Rye? What, plus 530? Plus 540? What do you got in
Let me
front of you?
just double check
He's going to
quickly.
check on that. So this is just a purely contest pick. Atlanta plus 13.5. But in real life, I am considering Atlanta money line upon further
Plus
review of this.
615.
615. Oh man, that's tickling my fancy. Because I didn't mind it at like 540, 550 in that range, and there's a lot less gap between 615 and smaller ones. I mean, things tend to have less of an advantage when the numbers are bigger, even if the spread is, from 550 to 615 is 55 points, or sorry, 65 points of juice, but it's not as big of a shift, you know what I mean, if you went from even to minus 165. Anyways, I don't mind Atlanta in real life to win this game at a pretty big price like that. So that's what I'm thinking about. Just because I am considering them on the money line as a high variance play. It's hard for me not to take them in the contest, even though I feel like Buffalo is more likely to cover this spread. So it's confusing that it is purely contest pick Atlanta in real life, considering Atlanta money line.
Yeah, that money line is just a tad under 14%, and that's with juice already added into that. So probably better than a 14% chance to win an NFL game between two professional teams.
Love
On to
that
the next
answer.
one, Jacksonville at the New England Patriots. Pats are 15-point favorites at home. Can you make this line high enough, fat guy?
It's a good question. I don't know. When in doubt, take the points. That's going to be another contest pick. I want to write off on something, but I like these big spreads. You and I really detest them, because the points get so meaningless because the strategies, like the time cost strategies, like it's if New England gets a lead, they get to choose. You know what I mean? Like how much time do we waste? How much do we want to win by? And like how inept is Jacksonville that like, do you know what I mean? Like them scoring a touchdown is like a pretty big feat for them at this point in a game, right? Like if they can
What becomes
manage.
dangerous too, like when we get this late into the week or into the season, is that Jacksonville has the number one pick locked up as of now. Is if they lose out, they're going to be the first overall pick. And with them firing their coach, like there's just a lot of things that are going in the direction where Jacksonville is probably going to try to lose. But like it's we don't like to like preach like tanking type stuff because usually everyone has something to play for. But this feels like a pretty unique situation.
The players have something to play for, but like Jacksonville, like they're indifferent. I wouldn't say they're tanking. Like I don't really buy that teams tank necessarily, but they, from a managerial perspective, they might not put their team's best foot forward, and then they just kind of let the low probabilities play themselves out. So like Jacksonville obviously is not really set up for success. I think that's maybe underselling it. And then New England, how far do you want to take it? Do you know what I mean? Like you just at this point, I swear, like a lot of the teams that are big favorites is, I think having a healthy team is becoming way more of a priority, you know what I mean, than winning by a lot, for instance.
Definitely.
Because you need the bodies. Because think about it. You can almost guarantee that you're going to lose someone or get close or have a probability of losing people to COVID. So like even backups are starting to become more valuable because we're seeing skeleton crews play week in and week out. So I can't imagine that teams want to risk it. Like a good example would be when watching this Kansas City Pittsburgh game. Kansas City, like you and I remember it, like just chucking it so much. They were legit just trying to like get people like off the field as quickly as possible, not injure anybody. They played really soft defense against Pittsburgh. You know what I mean? Not that they gave up lots of points or anything, but they did at the end play very, very soft. It just felt like let's just get home and get the team home in one piece. So that being said, like I don't really look at the incentive. Jacksonville doesn't really care if they win or lose, I would imagine, especially from a managerial standpoint. And New England, I'm pretty sure if they get a lead, are more concerned about the health of their team. So when in doubt, take the points. This will be one of those cases, purely a contest pick. But as far as wagering, this is definitely a stay away for me, and I can't find an advantage on either side. If anyone has any ideas, put them in the comment section for sure.
I feel the exact same way. I can only agree with everything Fat Guy
Oh
just said.
yeah,
On
nailing
the
it.
next one, the New York Giants at the Chicago Bears. Bears 6-point favorites at home. Fat Guy, this is kind of like the, as I like to say, five-star entertainment.
Well, you know what? They did have a 5-star entertainment game against Seattle, did they not? I
They
mean,
sure did. But
I
these
don't.
two teams together, not that Seattle's much better, but it's this one's going to be a tough one personally to watch. Uh, do you see any value on either
I
side as far as
actually
this
think I
line
see it
goes?
on the Chicago Bears, and this is a
Yeah,
key number. It's at 6, and
it is.
I like 6 is the new 7. I don't know if it's going to overtake 7, but it's at least close. We probably are seeing the amount of 7 frequencies over the last 3 years is probably underrunning expectation, and 6 is overrunning because they're very, very, very close right now. That being said, I think that's enough of a sample for me to conclude that 6 is at least in the ballpark of 7, making it a very key number, and laying 6.5 a very key shift. Because 7, it's 3-7-6 or 3-6-7 is going to be the order of key numbers. That being said, I don't want to lose this half point. And who's running to the wickets to bet on a backup quarterback for the New York Giants, which
Not many.
with what I believe is the worst coach in the NFL? So that being said, I'm going to take the Chicago Bears. I almost like the idea of taking them here at this key number of 6, or reverse teasing and laying like something like 9.5, but getting really positive juice. That would be one idea I'd be looking at. I like the Bears at this number of 6, and I do think it's going to shift. And I see this number closing at Chicago -7 bad juice, or Chicago -7.5 with slightly okay juice, like slightly bad juice with the Giants. So Chicago -7, Chicago -7.5 at close. That's what my guesstimation is. Even though that doesn't mean it's an estimate. My estimation. Why do we add that prefix guess? I do it all the time, and I think it's stupid. So we're going to go with Chicago -6, and I think there is CLV, and I think there's real life betting opportunities on this number at this time.
And then we have another entertainment special between the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints. The Saints are getting well, 7 points. They're 7-point favorites at home. Do you think there is closing line value on either side?
Yeah, I mean maybe on the Saints, and that's only because like it's one of those situations where people are going to do this mental gymnastic math, where okay, the Saints shut out the Bucks 9-0, and then
Mm-hmm.
that same Bucks team destroyed this Carolina team. So in that sort of like weird recency bias theorem, that means that New Orleans is gonna beat Carolina by 40, right? And I think it's
Yeah.
games as like I almost like Carolina +7, but in terms of establishing closing line value, I think this closes at New Orleans -7.5 all the way up to 8.5. I don't see people running to the wickets to bet on Carolina, especially with like, man, quarterback injuries really magnify dysfunction more or less. And I'm not calling Carolina dysfunctional necessarily, but like think about all the planning that went into a certain play style of a quarterback just to get rug swept all at once, and then you have to play this like week to week pseudo gambling type style that like just has such a low probability of working out. You know what I mean? And here's the funny thing too is like them getting destroyed by the Bucks. People will say it's expected. It's like I guess that's the theme of the show. It's not expected, but then also too, they busted up the the Cardinals like 4 or 5 weeks ago. So like there's high variance to this type of stuff. That being said, this is purely a contest pick. We're going to take the Saints, and I do think there is some closing line value for you. But I'm not sure if like a juiced up Saints at 7 moving to 7.5 is going to beat the juice long term. So I can't endorse it as a bet. But I do like the Saints -7, or sorry, Saints -7 purely as a contest pick.
Now, here's a game where I find it a lot more interesting. The Miami Dolphins travel to Tennessee to take on the Titans, who are 3.5-point favorites at home. So far, the money that's been bet against the spread very early on has been 50-50. Fat Guy, do you see closing line value on either side?
Oh, well, that's a tough one. It's kind of like I didn't mention it in this past game, but the New Orleans game is a look-ahead game, and so is this Miami one. This is a look-ahead line currently from when we're filming this. So Tennessee came out rather unscathed, we'll call it, in their victory. Very, very ugly victory against the San Francisco 49ers. That being said, we do know they're, yeah, like I said, relatively healthy, whereas Miami could have some injuries. The one thing about Miami, though, is like, is it, they seem like they're kind of like they're not a good team necessarily, and they might be like maybe one of the worst teams record wise, like in terms of team strength in the NFL for what they have. But like they could get some injuries, and I don't think it would affect the win probability too much. Tennessee, even like it's very interesting that like the Derrick Henry effect. People are like I've heard as big as high as a touchdown. I don't think any running backs really affect the win probability that much. Obviously, there are things, you can compare individual performances by like Donta Foreman, Dontrell Hilliard, and Jeremy McNichols. But as a basket, like, and especially when you lean a little bit more on passing, Tennessee's not that much worse for wear. I'm going to take them -3.5. I really don't like this pick aesthetically, and that's why I'm purely endorsing it only as a contest pick. Be Tennessee -3.5, simply because it's a look-ahead line, and Miami is, even though it's hard for them to get affected aside from perhaps a quarterback injury, even though Brissett's played pretty well, although I'm assuming Brissett's healthy as the backup, which is always a dubious prospect. But we are going to take Tennessee purely because it's a look-ahead line, and some injuries could affect Miami going forward, only for the contest. And I'm sorry to say I only have one pick so far that I'm actually backing with real dollars at the moment.
The Dolphins are an interesting team because they've won 6 in a row, but the
Yeah.
only team above 500 that they won over that stretch is the Ravens, who they beat by 12. And
That
then
was a wonderful performance, though. Like that was one of the performances of the year. But yeah.
But outside of that, they beat the Texans, the Jets, the Panthers, the Giants, and the Jets again. And then they get to play the Saints with Ian Book as the starting quarterback. So it's been a very fortunate run, but they can only play who's ever in front of them.
That's right.
The Titans are going to be a nice test to see how real they've been, I guess you could say. I know it's all hyperbole. On to the next game. Houston Texans at the San Francisco 49ers. Niners are 15-point favorites. 75% of early bettors or early money is on the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know why I just said the San Francisco Giants. But Texans coming off a big win, and they're still 15-point dogs. Back. Do you think this is a fair line?
It probably is. I was gonna say 14.5, 14. That's probably right. I do think there might be closing line value on Houston. It's hard. You're not gonna get much volume, but which always hurts a prospect because pros are gonna more or less push the line back to equilibrium. That's kind of how it works. Is once it shifts out and there's an edge on either side, someone's going to be with big money pushing on the other side. The only thing that can happen is when the how do I say it? The square money pushes it in such a direction that only so much probe money can fight back, and it might not land on equilibrium. That does happen from time to time. You don't really have to worry about that with square backing of the Houston Texans. But that being said, they might be a team that's circled on the parlay card with 15 points because think of the recency bias. San Francisco lost really ugly on prime time in a game, that felt like they really should have won. A team that like it just felt like they ran the ball twice unsuccessfully on first down, second down, the Titans, and then converted third and long, which is a really low percentage over and over and over again. So people are going to be, I think, a little sour on the Niners. So maybe even though the Niners are a popular team to pick, I think that's going to create some abstination. And is that even a word? And then the Houston Texans, are they? I think like they might get circled a little bit. Like, winning outright against LAC carries some clout, Big Rye. It does. Busting up Justin Herbert, that carries some clout. So I think that the Texans for one of the few times this season going to get a little bit more money placed on them than usual, and I think a little bit more less people are going to back the San Francisco 49ers than usual. So if I were to put a declaration of closing line value, I think it's actually going to be on the Texans, despite early bettors, which are usually early sharps, settling on the San Francisco 49ers at this moment.
On to the next one, Denver at LAC. Chargers are 6-point favorites at home. In fact, do you think there's closing line value on either side?
Yeah, I actually think it's on Denver. Like Denver losing to Las Vegas, in a closer game, that's like kind of whatever. To be real, it's not really that big of a black eye. LAC losing that bad to Houston, that's a black eye. I think and the guys that I'm a big LAC backer, I've bet on them more often than I haven't. And I've had really good and really bad results, polarizing, because they're the team that you and I would argue probably goes for it too much almost, which is, I'd much prefer
they're the most
that.
aggressive as far as coaching goes. I don't think they go for it too much, but they're one of the most aggressive teams I can ever remember as far as coaching.
Yes, I disagree, and I think they go for it slightly too much, whereas I think that Indianapolis and Cleveland have the best balance in terms of choosing when to go for it. I'm a really big Indy fan, as I mentioned earlier in terms of aesthetic. That being said, I like Denver here. I think 6 is a nice number to get, and I think it's going to settle around 4.5. The only difference is the gap isn't that big, so I think Denver as a live dog isn't that unfathomable here. And I do think that for all the LAC backers, they might abstain. The recency bias might be there, and it might be just abstaining, right? But this is again another similar situation. People aren't rushing to the windows taking Denver, but they might be attracted by the 6 points, which might generate some live movement to get some LAC backers. So I do think there is some closing line value on Denver at a price point of 6 at this current time.
On to the next one, the LA Rams travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens, who are 3-point dogs at home. I'm guessing this line is factoring in that Lamar Jackson plays. That is my guess, Fat Guy. Do you think there's any value on either side?
Well, that's where I'm going with this too, and that's one of those difficult spots here is COVID information and so forth. I think the Rams' dog is the Ravens as dogs at home. That's always a good proposition. I always felt that. Kind of like even the Tom Brady Patriots. The probably the 3 or 4 times you and I can remember them being dogs.
Yeah.
We took them every time. Just, and this is going to be one of those spots here. I think the Ravens are an incredibly coached team. Think about even what they did against Cincinnati. What they lose 41-21, I think that was the final score. They put up
for Cincy.
Yeah, they put up 3 touchdowns with Josh Johnson, a guy he played for the Jets earlier this year. The guy who's played for I think the most teams, don't quote me on that, in NFL history. I think we're at 18 with him, and I'm not even joking. So how can you get a walk-on to be that successful and have that good of an offense? That's just good coaching. I like the Ravens. Yeah, they gave up a bunch of touchdowns against the Bengals, but the Bengals played aggressively and they got the result they wanted to. I like the Ravens. I think they're a good, really well-coached team, and they also have a level of aggressiveness that makes me happy. I kind of like Baltimore to win this game outright as well. Just as soon as I'm not taking it a 50-50 proposition. Like a plus 135, plus 155 if I'm really, really, really greedy. That being said, Baltimore plus 3 is going to be the play here. More so, I still think there's closing line value as well, much as I jumbled that ending here. So Baltimore plus 3, close of Rams minus 2.5, assuming Lamar Jackson plays, which again would need some more investigation. On to the next one.
Next one's going to be Arizona at Dallas. So it's going to be quite the exciting matchup for the public. I'm sure lots of bets are going to be placed on this game. Dallas gets 3.5 points. They're 3.5-point favorites at home. There's no betting market data. Fat Guy, do you think there is closing line value on either side?
Yeah, I think it's first of all, it's a look-ahead line. Dallas has yet to play. I think they're playing right now. I purposely don't have the game on because I don't want to be swayed, because it does, the outcome of a game does matter. Not for me in terms of whether I think Team A is better than Team B, but in terms of whether I think the public is going to have recency bias on Team A or Team B, negative or positive, or or abstaining. That's even a bias as well, just not betting at all because there is no gun to people's head. That being said, Arizona was a benefactor of some really good running above expectation, getting results that were probably a little bit higher than the skill of their team. And now they've had pretty much the opposite happen, like regression to the mean, but not through dilution, as is always supposed to be the case, but through like direct negative results. I mean, losing to Indy, and that was like an injured Indy too, and losing to Detroit, like these aren't good losses. So I think that's why I think this is a mispricing. I think this is half point off. I think Dallas should be 3-point favorites good juice, or 2.5-point favorites bad juice. So I like the Cardinals here. I think this little hook, this half point, I think it's a big deal here. So Cardinals plus 3.5. That's going to be the play in real life and the contest pick.
And Cowboys up 14-0 early. Sorry for the spoilers if anyone watches this first for some reason. Next up, the most puzzling line of the week. Detroit at Seattle. Seattle -9 at home. How are the Lions getting 9 points here, fat guy?
It's weird to say, hey, that the Lions are getting too many points, and I think they are in this game. I think this is a 7 game. I really, really do. And this is going to sound even crazier again. I think there's value on Detroit's money line. I think there's closing line value on Detroit. I like Detroit. Detroit Lions, I am fully, them not getting it done against the Falcons, that's not like, there isn't much bad news like you can have for Detroit. And they played with a backup quarterback too. Like this team just, I don't know, they hang around, and I really like them. And I think Seattle's going to have some bad egg on its face with that Chicago loss. So Seattle -7, I think, is a more accurate reflection of this line. I think it's going to close around 7.5, or a bad juice 7 for Detroit. So I like Detroit in this. In real life, I like them to win at the appropriate linear odd set, money line odd set, and I like Detroit in the contest. Let's go the Lions.
And Lions are 9-5-1 against the spread on closing.
What does that tell you?
Tells me they've played above their expectation.
Correct.
On to the next one. Minnesota at Green Bay. Green Bay is getting 6.5 points, or they're 6.5-point favorites at Lambeau. Fat guy, your thoughts on this game?
Oh, this is gonna be an entertaining game, let's say. So 6.5. This is probably right. I always think like a bad juice. Minnesota 7 is also in the cards. I don't have much to add on this one. I don't really love this game. Green Bay's on fire. It's probably a little bit juiced up. So I will take Minnesota because that half point on the 6 is probably it's probably sufficient for me to take them. I'm not convinced I'm taking them in real life. It's just a contest pick. It is a divisional game. Tend to be closer. We'll take Minnesota plus 6.5 with no real insight, purely on the contest. Well, that didn't.
Looks like the Cowboys have. It looks like the Cowboys have just gone up 21-0. It might have been a defensive score as well, if I'm not mistaken. But on to the Monday night game, Cleveland at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh 1-point favorites at home. 99% of early money has been wagered on the Steelers. Fat guy, your thoughts on the Monday nighter?
This one I like Cleveland, and I do think there's going to be closing line on Cleveland. Cleveland putting up a really good performance on essentially prime time. It is a Saturday night game. That was so weird. Then again, like, viewership is a little bit rocky during the holidays too. So it's not like, is it going to carry that sway? I'd like to take a look at it too. We do track betting data volume, so I'd like to see how it is affected on days like a New Year's Day, for instance, or the Christmas Eve or Christmas. So I want to know how many eyes are, how many eyes doesn't really matter. How many bets were placed here. So I think, with Pittsburgh getting blown out and Cleveland having a reasonable performance, even though it was really ugly from their quarterback, especially when they had such a good chance of winning near the end, I do think it is going to end up with Cleveland being favored in this game. I almost think it's going to be like Cleveland -2. So I'd be okay with that as well. But that being said, I think it's worth an early wager on the Cleveland Browns. Let's go Brownies here, and I really hope they make the playoffs. It is another team that I really, really like.
All right, Fat Guy, that is it for the pick. So on to the lightning round. We got Tampa Bay at the New York Jets,
New York Jets.
Kansas City at Cincinnati,
Cardiac Cats.
Raiders at Colts,
Formerly the Oakland Raiders.
the Eagles at the Washington football team,
Philadelphia Eagles.
Atlanta at Buffalo,
The Atlanta Falcons.
Jacksonville at New England,
1 seed Jags.
New York Giants at the Chicago Bears,
Lori Lightfoot's Bears.
Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints,
New Orleans Saints.
Miami Dolphins at the Tennessee Titans,
Tennessee Titans.
Houston Texans at San Francisco,
Houston Texans.
Denver Broncos at the LA Chargers,
Denver Broncos.
Rams Ravens,
Ravens. Dog Ravens at home.
Arizona Cardinals at the Dallas Cowboys,
Cardinals in the hook.
Detroit Lions at the Seattle Seahawks,
The Lions +9.
Minnesota Vikings at Green Bay on Sunday night.
Divisional game, Minnesota Vikings.
And then on Monday night, the Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The Browns from Cleveland.
Oh yeah, that's the lightning round. Congrats to Billy369 for going 13-3 for week 15. Not his first time up on that leaderboard, and probably not the last. So congrats, Billy369. Yes. And I think you made some moves even in the overall leaderboard, just to tease it for the people keeping track at home. On to the week 16 leaderboard, where we have not Carnival personnel and Setupple tied at 11-3 through 14 games. So congrats, guys. And I'm also going to give a shout out to BRFG, who's gone 8-6 this week.
Oh my goodness, so okay.
It's been a while, but back to our slightly winning ways. And then also we have a little bit of a tighter gap here now between Colty Boy, Billy369, and Cassone. Colty Boy still has a healthy 4-game lead, but he missed the Thursday game. And Billy369, with a very strong week, is only 4 games back with 2 weeks to play. So congrats, guys. It's looking like it's going to be close to finish off. Colty Boy still very impressive with his 57%.
Absolutely.
Your thoughts on the overall?
Colty Boy might be the new Mr. 57.
And then on to the JS715 name of the week, honorable mentions, Fat Guy.
Rye was rocking a t-shirt saying, "I was so good that Santa came twice." I don't get it, but it seemed like a good name. I just want to break 50%. Is that too much to ask, Santa? You might have to get that, that shiny penny, the one you got, you stole by reaching your hand into the mall fountain. You might want to use that instead. Did Urban Meyer sponsor this show? I guess so. I guess when you have such a poor record, it could only be him. Fat Guy, you will... will you be my Santa Claus this year? I can barely fit down my own chimney, let alone yours. This name got snubbed. No, it didn't. I got immunized against losses this week. I'm sure that'll be just as effective as the current immunization protocols. Freezing his big rise off. He is where he is. Look at him. He's wearing a jacket indoors. What does that tell you? He's either weak or it's cold or somewhere in the middle. I have a lot of time on my cold hands. Well, it reminds me of that Charlton Heston for the NRA. I love that line from my cold dead hands. On to the JSN 715 name of the week. Joe Judge, a book by its cover. Cliched, but apropos. I hate Joe Judge. He does suck, and you can judge him by his recent losses because his decision-making is poor. The Giants are poor. I dislike him the most, and not only that is that report... Me and Big Rye hate reports and stuff. We'd rather just, see an action happening. But sometimes when there's smoke, there is fire, to add another cliche to the mix. Joe Judge might be coming back with Daniel Jones for another year with the Giants, and that would just be another year in the toilet, I believe. Even if they get the results, it is frivolous. He is a terrible coach, and he should not be head coach in the NFL. Positionally, he's probably okay because he was under Bill Belichick, but as far as a head coach goes, his decision-making is abhorrent.
I was actually just watching highlights of the New England Patriots comeback Super Bowl victory against the Atlanta Falcons, and I did see Joe Judge on the sideline, and it kind of made me chuckle.
Did you?
For all we know, it was all him. So make your picks against the spread for week 17 at BigRyanTheFatGuy.com. Remember, there is a 100 USD prize in Bitcoin to the regular season winner, and it's looking like a 3-horse race as we head to the finish line. But who knows? Those guys might forget to make their picks, and there's still openings behind them. So
Watch out for Billy 369. I didn't even do it right.
Yeah, he's gonna get low. That was so lame. Okay,
yeah.
That's it, fat guy. That's our picks.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
17. I think the one that really stood out to us, we don't have all the games up there, but the one that stood out was the Detroit-Seattle game, I believe.
It absolutely did.
Just seems like a mispricing, and Detroit has played so well, and I feel like Seattle is a bit unpredictable in a bad way.
I got some bad news. If you talk any longer, I'm going to fill these depends.
All right. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for joining us, and good luck for your picks against the spread for week 17.